Hello, hello. Welcome in, everyone. Time for another Feedback Friday. We're going to take a look at some viewer submitted figures and talk about what works, talk about what we can do better. And yeah, so let's get going. So this guy, we've got this guy. This was from, sorry, I forgot. I missed the name. 6'2" Koala. So I'm guessing he's Australian, based on the name. Yeah. So we've got this little. Wait, do you guys know where this is from? Is this Trench Crusade? This feels like a Trench Crusade model. But Wami, thanks for the Prime. I appreciate it. So I mean, I like it. Like, it's pretty cool. Yeah, the colors work nice. I like the green and all the woods and stuff. The brown and reds work well together. No, I haven't gotten to you yet, Murph, because you said you updated new pictures, so I'm just going in order. This is the first one. So, yeah. I mean, I think overall it's pretty nice. I think probably the main thing for me is there's some like level of detail stuff that I think could be better. Mostly like, so real quick, like, these sandbags, right? Like, some of this texture for me is a bit like big, right? So I would try and like increase the amount of texture here, like double this up. It's a little too like checkerboardy, where instead of canvas or like a rucksack, it's feeling a bit yeah, like textured instead, or like checkerboardy instead. Hi, Steve. Forget you're like literally local to Gen Con. I hope Gen Con is fun. Did you get some of the new stuff? You want to try and pick me up? Hey, try and pick me up one of those gift bag KDM figures. The Crimson Croc Lady. Tell Poots it's for me. Go up to Poots and be like, hey, Eric wants one of these Crimson Croc ones. He'll paint it on stream. I know you prefer we don't submit the same many 2 Feedback Fridays in a row, but if I submit one quickly today, will you help me with light placement? Is it okay if I submit again when I'm done with the miniature? Yeah, I mean, I prefer you guys don't, but yeah, you can. If it's like something quick, I don't want to treat this like I'm hand-holding people like through painting their figures. So, yeah, you can see here I'm just trying to create a bit more like finer texture on the bags, okay? Now, as for the guy, I think some stronger line work in some areas is going to help. Particularly like around the feet and stuff. Right, we can go a little darker. Better Half Hobby, thanks for the follow, welcome. So I think we can get a little darker on some of the line work here, which will help give some separation to these elements. And then let's kind of consider like what sort of material this armor is made out of. Like I assume it, yeah, based off of this, it's like painted It's like painted steel, right? The question is how bright is that steel? And then how much do we want to like enhance some of these edges and stuff in order to make some of the shapes a little more readable, because we're losing some of the shape in some of these areas. Like I think we could make, I like this highlight on the visor here. So what I would recommend is grab something like this, or even like slightly orangish, you know, so one of these like nice salmony skin tone colors. And then we're going to enhance some of the definition through here just by pushing a little bit some of these highlights, right? Make this armor, it's just a little bit, right? So like you've started to do it in some areas, but I think we could push it a little bit further. So let's grab something like this red. So down here on the feet, for example, right? Like create some separation on these parts, right? Give a little more shape to this stuff. Is going to make it's going to make it clear like what we're looking at. So you should be able to see sort of now that the overall shape of his boot is coming, or like the details of the saboton is coming across a little more. And then we can push that even just a little bit further, you know, with one of these like kind of salmony orange tones. I'm not trying to paint like an Iron Man suit, you know, where it's like shiny red, but just a little bit of line definition will help this show up a little more, right? Like even areas like here, we can increase the weight a little bit more, like maybe on his face, in order to get a little more separation and volume. We can pick a spot to give like a nice strong highlight. Like you've done a really nice highlight on the head, like on the top of the head, but I feel like we don't have a strong specular light on the red. Okay, so that's a big one for me. And then I think the next thing we can do is you can come back, like some of this is pretty pale, so you can come back with like a brown ink and kind of go on over some of the leather and try and like push the color depth a little more on some of these leather parts. If you highlight with too much white, like I don't know exactly what color you're using here to highlight, but we can start to lose some of the, everything starts to look like washed out and pastel-y, you know? So coming back with some of that stronger color will definitely help. And then, yeah, you want to like create some outlining on stuff like this, okay? Now you see how gray and washed out this is? It's like, it's just super gray. So this is why I say like grab some of this like a warm dark brown and come back and create some, you know, filter some color over top of this and create some nice like warmth to your shadows, like get some depth into the shadows. Like here, the hand is probably a little too similar to the skin tone of the arm because you're highlighting it so much. So I would try and increase some of the color depth there. And then, anything else? Anything else? I feel like that's the big things for me. I think you could maybe consider doing some more work to the base. I don't love this. It looks a little unfinished. This is a tough one, guys. So like when you do a base like this, this requires some power tools, you know. But if you have like you can buy like a benchtop sander from Harbor Freight or something. So when you do pieces like this, where you're creating this sort of shape and you're trying to get it to like line up nice and perfect with the plinth you're using, you can kind of over sculpt it, right? So you fill it in with a putty, whatever kind you want to do. You can use like super sculpey, like an oven baked clay or something, or milliput, whatever. You do that, and then you sand it flush on the benchtop sander. So you have the flat reference point of the bottom, right? So here, let me draw it real quick, just in orange up here. So say you have a plinth like this, right? You have this round, nice round plinth. And then you want to make something. So what you do is you kind of overextend it off the edge of the base. Okay. And then on a spindle, on a benchtop sander, which is normally like a big disc sander or something like that, right? You put it on you use the flat reference point, and then you slowly sand it back until you get a nice flush edge with the actual plinth, right? And then you get a very clean effect. And then you sculpt any of the stuff that you want to overhang, right? But getting the initial shape, right? That way, yeah, it's this very clean edge where it looks like it doesn't look like something sculpted on top of a plinth. It looks like something sculpted on, a separate piece. And man, a Harbor Freight benchtop sander is like, I don't know, $50 maybe. All right. MTech Productions. It's just, in the end, it gives you a much more clean, clean result. It's just nicer presentation overall. Okay. All right. So, okay. Come on. So, Urso also. Okay, so Bunk with his Murloc. I like it. It's very cool. Yeah, I like the plants. I'm actually curious what plants you used. If this is, because these look great. Okay. All right. Ursor, yeah. I know there's a bunch of people that posted updated pictures to theirs. That's why I'm skipping over them. Okay. So Murloc boy looks pretty good. Couple things. I think the mouth and face could have a little bit better focus. And I'll show you how in a second. The weapon also, the non-metallic is a little weird. And the base I quite like a lot, but the dirt itself is a little bleh. It's not great. Okay, so for the weapon, I think people often kind of overdo this. Like there's too much noise in the flat part, all right? So my recommendation to you is to simplify, always try and like simplify the flat sections, okay? Create interest in the main, like the edge, okay? So where you have curves, right? So this I would try and simplify down. Right, you can still have a little bit, but it's easy to like go overboard and try and like put too much information into a part that doesn't really need it. All right. So just doing something like that like makes this cleaner, and now you can see the bevel more, right? Like the bevel is much clearer. Okay. Then the other thing I would do is I would then find a spot on the blade or on the bevel to make it like very shiny, okay? And then you want to repeat that one in the same spot on the other side, okay? So something like this. That's gonna make the blade stand like the blade is catching right. Okay, so just too simple, like simplifying this down makes it, I think, read much more like metallic. All right. Now, let's touch on the dirt real quick. Avoid this splotchiness. All right. So you got a lot of splotchy, bumpy parts to the base. Like there's like a little too much contrast to the dirt here. This is one of those things that I would simplify, in that I would like take a color, whether it's your sort of greenish tones that you're using in the lights, and I would try and like unify it a little bit more. All right. We don't need to overdo the contrast on dirt. Like get the overall shape of it a little more clear, and then just leave it, you know. It can be kind of plain. Like there's parts that we want to draw attention, and then there's parts that we don't want to draw attention, and dirt is not really one of the things we want to draw attention to. Okay, so reduce the contrast a little on the dirt. Don't over dry brush it or whatever you're doing to create like the texture. If you go outside and look at dirt, right, it's pretty just kind of flat brown. Early start to the new norm? No, it's just I want to play Kill Team tonight, so I'm doing it kind of early. I don't know, I haven't decided like when I'm going to switch it back and forth. Right, so simplify. Okay. Now, the face. Okay. The face here, we want to push the light more. Your bright spot is like up here on the forehead. All right. So we want to add some more bright spots to like the lips and stuff. Okay. Some more highlight spots. Then we can push the teeth a lot more. They're very gray right now. Also, the gums are like very grayish. So let's try and add a little more color in here. Okay, like pick out the gums where you can. Okay, give them some highlights, you know. If light is catching on the tongue, give it a highlight. Like this is, the mouth is very wet, right? So you're gonna get some shinier spots like in here, just like the glossiness of an eye, right? You have these like bright shines, like you will get bright shines on these like wet spots of the lips and things. Okay, so don't be afraid to push that a little more. Avoid black in between your teeth. Okay, you don't want them to be like pure black. See how dark that is? What it does is it like shrinks the teeth too much. So take this gray and like try and really make this like extend out. Okay? Like get the full tooth and leave like a very thin line. And I would actually, typically I'd prefer like a sort of dark, like pinkish red. Use like the color you're using sort of in the gums and stuff to create the like in between the teeth. Works well. All right, and then we need to put the shines on the teeth. So give them some shine. Okay, so get those highlights on there. This guy uses Colgate. Colgate. You can even, if you want to make them look a little sharper, you can do like a second kind of edge. Like you can do like a little secondary reflection on them. All right, get these ones nice and shiny. All right, so spend some extra time like on the mouth and also on the eyes. Like these are really important parts of this. So we want to make sure this stuff is like really nice and clean. And then, yeah, I would pull, depending on what the main view of the figure is, I would try and pull the highlight like closer. So if this is if you're considering this the main view, right, then that main reflection point wants to be a little closer. We want the black here to go nice and dark. So we get that really intense black of the eye. And then whatever color you're doing, this also gets a little gray here, so I would consider punching some color into it in order to, again, draw a little more attention to the eyes here. I see you're using cold highlights, but you can use this warmth here to create a nice contrast with the cold lights, and that'll help draw attention more. Okay. Your reds also need some nice brighter reflections. I think just in general, because he's, you know, a sea creature, right? Like a Murloc's just gonna be like always kind of, he's gonna be moist, right? It's just gonna be kind of slimy. So they're like a frog, right? I know they're Sahegan, but they're like frog-like creatures. So don't be afraid to like push a little shine on some of this stuff, you know? Give them some shines on the hands. All right. So you should be able to see, right, that now we're like, can see how much more attention the face gets. Okay. Okay. What is going on? Mingy. Oh, these are like the hardest thing to give feedback on. Oh, geez. These like huge is this even a GW model? Like, is this an official model? This looks way too detailed. I don't believe you. I think you saved. Guys, is this official? It's not, right? No, this is gotta be a custom thing, because that doesn't look. Those ropes and stuff, they don't look right. So the water is pretty cool. I like the base. Like all the base is super nice. The figure itself is pretty good. I think the problem comes when you've got like something like this, this dinosaur, right? He's just like, he's like too realistic, you know? It's like too detailed in a way that feels out of place with the rider, you know? It's like the amount of scales in here is like ultra real, like this is like ultra realism or something, you know? So you get like these super tiny like these super tiny scales, and then you got these like big chunky scales on the rider, and they don't really match stylistically. How do I want to give feedback on this? Because like I could go into painting scales like super, like how to paint super detailed dinosaur scales, right? And then, or dragon scales. But that's like, you know, what you might see from like like on a Carol Rudick dragon or something. But then you have like this more GW style of painting scales where they're chunkier, you know? I'm trying to decide like how do you make these two figures fit each other stylistically? Vigor Mortis. Hello, thanks for the prime. I think the biggest problem is like with it. Oh, and Geo Tortoise, thanks for the tier 2. Thank you very much. I think the biggest difference here, the thing that would help a lot is that like when you have this much detail on the dinosaur, it starts to lose its form a little bit, right? Like you have what is like a camouflage basically on the dinosaur, in the like green and black sections, and then you have all of this light on the scales, and then you have the white sections, and all of this kind of combined leads to it being really difficult to see like the silhouette and shape of the dinosaur, you know? So it's just like, it's like too much going on. So I think we can simplify a little here in that if we took some like nice shadow colors and kind of tone back the like the level of scale, like the scaling, right? That we could, it might result in a better feeling overall. So let's give some shape and stuff back to the legs. Okay, so like here on the arms, right, on the body, we want to get some of this shape to come back. And then I'm going to tone down these like super bright, like this, you're overdoing the red here a little too much, where it's like, it's becoming so bright. You're trying to like edge highlight all these scales. So let's tone it back just a little bit so that we can get back to like the general shape of the leg. Okay, like here, let's get the red back. All right, so by toning that down, we should be able to see more of the like shape of the dinosaur, right? So we reduce it a little in order to bring out the overall shape. Ethan, thanks for the tier 1, man. Thanks for 6 months. Appreciate it. You guys are awesome. Okay, then what I would do is I think the green is not really helping on the, I think it's kind of interfering too much with the green in the base and the green on the actual rider. I get what you're trying to do, but I think we could take and use, instead of like a green, like I like the black that you've kind of done. So what if we did, instead of like a bright like lime green, we did like a grayish green instead, you know? And like now we use contrast to create the, like we use value contrast to create the camouflage, so it becomes a little more readable. Like real quick, let's look at what happens when we, especially when it comes to like animals, they tend to use value contrast in order to create camouflage, right? Because not all animals see in the same spectrum of color that we do. When you look at this, like look at his neck. The difference in the patterning is just gone, right? Unlock a random emote. Okay. Unlock it. Did I do it? I have no idea. Sure. Okay. All right. So we could see that the patterning kind of goes away, right? So we want to bring that patterning back. And instead of like this, let's go even darker, you know? Let's get like a nice dark foresty green. Oops. And we're going to create this patterning through value, all right? Value is more important than color. This is what happens when you, this is one of the things that I've been trying to stress a lot, right? Is that it's not about contrast on every little individual scale and every individual little thing, right? We have to create contrast overall. So here, by using like a strong value contrast, now you can create some little indication of separation on these parts. But now you should be able to see that like the patterning of like this darker color is much clearer shape-wise on the two, right? Then you come back with a slightly lighter green-gray, and then you can pop in some of the individual scales. You can pop those out and stuff, but yeah, don't overdo it, you know? Like, we have to think about looking at them like this, right? And this is not clear. This starts to become a little more clear. Okay? Then I think you can go smaller. Then you can start to add a little more detail, and you can start to do like smaller patterning bits, right? make it a little more jagged, a little rougher, right? It has more detail than just the initial shape, okay? Hope that helps. Yay, choo choo, it says. All right. Hope that was helpful. Hi, Eric. I'm not sure you'll go this far. Well, we coming back to it. I'd love to have some feedback on the face and hair. The rest is only a rough sketch and the light placement with 2 sources. Also, I'm not sure about the cast shadow of the horn. Might just not paint it. What's your thought process on whether or not to paint cast shadows? Finally, I think the iris of the eyes are not round enough. Okay. How do you reduce spotting when zenithing with Liquitex white ink, more PSI using thinner? I don't really care about the spotting because it's all going to get painted over anyways. It's just there to help you give a easier surface to paint the initial layers on. All right. Gummy Urple, hello. And Mini Maddies. Thanks for following. Okay. So, what should we hit on first? The cast shadow. Okay. Let's talk about the cast shadow. So, which of the two, what light source is creating the cast shadow of the horn? Come on, chat. This is chat interaction time. Which of the 2 light sources creating the cast shadow of the horn? Yeah, the like magenta light source, right? But which is the main light source? Yeah, the other one, right? The other light source is the main light source, okay? So, which light source is going to be like the more powerful of the 2? Yeah, the main one. So, this light source that we have coming from right to left, you know. So we have a more white, general white light source coming in from this direction. And then we have this like magenta light source coming in from sort of this direction. All right. But this one's stronger. This is this one is the main, right? So this one's going to like overpower whatever cast shadow that you're going to have like from this side, okay? So this will not show up. Right? Because the main light source will drown that out. Okay? Now, as far as general shape and stuff, I think it's going okay. The eyes are a little weird. She's like they're rolling back a little too much. Like, let me see if I can even do it. Right? Like how I'm trying really hard to look up that much where that much white of my eyes are showing underneath. Like to the point where it hurts. Okay? Would there even be cast shadows in two opposite directions? There might, but they would be really subtle. But most likely they would be so drowned out that you wouldn't even see them. Okay? Like I would try and demonstrate, but it's a little too much. No, you can have two light sources and have cast shadows, but like, yeah, it's just they would be so subtle, like that they're just not worth really painting. Okay, I don't want to go like super in depth on like multiple light sources and cast shadows. This is not what I want to be hitting on right now, because we could talk about this for 30 minutes and I do not want to do that on Feedback Friday. But just general like thought process here should be basically like the main light source is too intense for you to really see the cast shadow from the other side. Okay. Now, let's look at, so the eyes. You wanted to know about the eyes. Yes, they're like too high up, okay? This is like uncomfortably looking upwards, okay? So bring the eyes a little bit more forward. You can have them like high like this, but you don't want them to like look like they're rolling into the back of her head, okay? So I would bring them down a little bit. And she can still look like she's looking upwards, but it's not quite so intense. Now, this is sort of your shadow color here. This like green, this grayish sort of blue tone. It's very desaturated. I would try and enhance your, if you're going for something dramatic, I would try and enhance your Terminator a little bit. All right. You have no Terminator on the nose. Okay, and then you have you have zero Terminator on the you have zero Terminator on the jacket. So where is the shadow on the jacket in order for this pink to show up on her jacket, right? So some kind of dark brownish color is needed in order to do that. And also it's like, what is that shadow coming from? Is it like casting from, are these casting shadows? Like, is her head casting a shadow across her torso? Like, where are we getting the shadow for these things to show up, right? This would all, like we would get shadows in here. They might be quite subtle, but you would have some sort of shadow like this. Right, so think about the direction of the light here and what sort of shapes these make. Okay? Now, when you do two light sources, I think this pink is, if this is a colored light source, this is too white. Okay, so what I would do is I would bring up the intensity of the pink and just let it be pink, you know? This would probably wrap around a little bit. It would hit areas like here under the eye socket, right? And look at the difference between the magenta here and the magenta on the hair, right? It's just, it's too washed out. You're trying to make it bright, but you can use bright values with saturation. So you can go back over top of it and create, if you're trying to create this like neon light effect, right? Also, how would you get a neon light like this? Anybody know? How do you get a magenta light? Let's quiz the chat again. What two color lights? What two color light sources do we need to create a magenta light source? Yep. Red and blue combined to make magenta light. So go look at an open sign, or go stand next to a neon open sign, and you will see that it is not purple, the light you get, it is magenta. Okay, so make these a little more intense, all right? Don't fear the color. Okay, then these sorts of things will only show up in shadows, like they only show up on the shadow side. All right, so if this stuff's in shadow, then we get some of the magenta showing up. All right, so really try and separate. Really try and separate your light sources. Okay, you need a terminator. There are areas where I do not really see one. Okay. And, yeah, fix the eyes for sure. Okay. I also am not feeling the, just the white in general on the shirt. I feel like it, or the brown, maybe. It feels really out of, spectrum. It feels like you have two different sort of color schemes going on here with the girl, where she's like teal. She's like all teal, right? And then you have this like brown and white. I think a darker color or something might work better. Maybe instead of this, like a bluish, like a subtle blue color. Let me just make a layer on top real fast and see what happens here if I just change this. Maybe. Flapjack. Thanks for the 4 months. Thanks for the Prime. At Gen Con, so I'll be in and out, and I might miss my model, but thanks for the feedback. You're welcome. Can always watch it later. Okay, so. Don't jump. Every time, man. Why does it do... I wish there was a way to make it not do that. Alright. Now we're into new ones. Okay, Dimitri. Hello. Hi, Eric. Would appreciate general feedback on the model. Target is SMC standard level. I don't know what that means anymore because SMC now has 3 levels. I think just paint the best to the best of your ability and don't worry about targeting some standard or whatever, you know? I think it's pretty nice so far. Yeah, it's looking cool. Again, it's a It's a little pastel. Guys have a tendency to paint quite pastel. And I think that's because you're always just adding too much white to your mixture. We can make this green way more interesting. Okay, it's too minty fresh. All right. So look how mint green that is. See how close to white it is? Let's try and alter the color a little bit. So instead of like a white green, let's try and go with like a little more of a yellowish or something, okay? We'll see how this feels. Yeah, all this white just makes it like, it just feels so washed out, you know? All right. Something like that, right? And let's simplify this shape up top. This is very light, right? This is a very flat shape. It's also facing upwards, so it will be much more flat in terms of the lighting direction, okay? Now, how do we make the shadows more interesting? Well, let's add some color depth to them. Let's maybe add like use some brown, like deep browns, okay, to add some depth to this color, right? So we're going to use the complementary here and start to create some more like color depth to this green, okay? So it's not just like I want you to look how gray green this is, okay? So when I select this and you see it in here, you're like all your colors are like over here. It's just this is gray, right? This is gray. That one's not too bad, but like this is gray. So you're doing like this. You're over here. You got nothing over here. All right, so we need to add some life back into this color, okay? All right, and then we can take a green that's like really there. I feel like Death Guard are more like this sort of greenish. They're much more yellow. All right. Let's do this. Let's do a saturation layer. Okay. Let's just pump the saturation a little bit in some areas. We can add some life back into the color, right? Hello, Kefta. Thanks. Thanks for the tier 1 to 3 months. Okay. So, don't be afraid to add some color value. Don't add some saturation, you know, like everything's always just gray and pastel-y. Like filter some color back on top, you know, there's lots of ways. So let's look at like, right, let's turn that off for a second. Let's look at the difference in just like, right now there's this like variation, there's more nuance in the color switches. Like your technical skills are pretty good. There's like some crisp highlights and things. I feel like you're maybe not going far enough on some of the weathering. Like you've got some nice weathering here, but I think you could, again, this is really gray. I think you could introduce some more weathering like around rivets and stuff. Think about where water and things like that would accumulate. The steel is also probably too clean. Okay, now I'm gonna ask, what sort of metal are we going for here? Based on the verdigris, I would assume that this is supposed to be copper, but nothing about this screams copper to me. Again, why guys? Why does this not feel like copper? Someone, please. There you go. It just doesn't have the color saturation it needs, right? So let's come back to the saturation layer and let's add some of the red tones that I expect to see in like the red, like deep red brown tones, right? Like think about a dirty penny, right? You get these like deep orange browns. In fact, if copper is this desaturated, right? Or like this dirty, it's typically not very shiny. Okay? Like just think about a dirty penny. Okay? So hi Reaper. Hello, thanks for the raid. Hi Eric. Maybe a dumb question, but but for the online painting session of the 9th of August. No, you need to prime it before. I posted a picture of mine. Yeah, you need to prime it. Prime and Zenithal. Okay, so like let's look. Even when I try and push the saturation, it's just like there's nothing there, right? Like I'm trying to add saturation to what exists, and it just doesn't, you know? Now I'm like, is this copper? Okay, so let's do like a multiply, okay? Maybe not multiply. What do we want to use? Color burn? Color dodge? All right, so we need to get some of that coppery feeling back to this color, because this is not doing it. All right. Okay. Yeah, like all this stuff, it just doesn't have the brown that I expect to see in a copper tone. Especially weathered dark copper. Like look at diver suits and stuff, you know? That's going to be a good example of like a deep copper. Okay? And then I think you're also probably using a little too much blue in your steel, but it's not bad. Okay, so I think that will help. I think you could do a lot more with the base. Like this is supposed to be like bent steel, like iron, you know, like a big steel beam, like I-beam. It's just there's just like too much gray and it's all the same in the base. So I would try and work on the color. Look at reference for like weathered metals. Okay. You're not going to see a lot of blue in a dirty steel. All right. Arcane. Alex. Mousy. All right, let's look at the mouse. Pretty good. Pretty good. Base is okay. I think it could be a little better. It's a little boring, but it's fine. This is a weird one for me. So I'm like I know I get very crazy on bases, okay, like in terms of like how picky I can get. So if he's a mouse, right? How big is he supposed to be? Like, is he anthropomorphized mouse? Is he like 4 feet tall? Or is he the size of a mouse? What do you guys think? If he's the size of a mouse and he's just wearing a suit of armor, right? So he's like, I don't know, let's say he's 6 inches tall. Is the grass in scale with a mouse if he's like 4 to 5 inches tall? Or would the grass be like, these are things like I think about, and I think you should think about, right? Because it helps sell the scale of the figure better. Okay, so, or should the grass be like this? Like, which one? I don't know. Which one makes more sense? Like, who knows? Whatever. So, yeah, it's one of those things that I think you should think about. You should consider when doing basing. It's like, instead of just doing it, just like, oh, just sprinkle some dirt and then stick some grass tufts on it, right? Like, really try and imagine this character and like what is going on here, and like should it be like some giant grass or dandelions or whatever? I don't know. Yeah. Now, as far as the figure, I think the non-metallic is quite nice. It's a little too much color. You're kind of all over the place, especially when you go and look at the shield too, right? Like, I feel like you're sort of just like, do some of this, like you're just grabbing bottles, like, oh, I need to put some red on here and some this and that. So it's like, I feel like there's a lack of kind of thought when it comes to like color placement. Like, why purple pants and then a purple little tabard thing and then a red and green shield and then what looks like a red sword hilt, but something's weird with the hands. Right, like, let's consider the heraldry and stuff we're trying to do. So, and then he's got like hazel eyes and so I would simplify the color palette, right? Like, if you want to make him look knightly and kind of stand out against all this green of the base, like, The green cloak, for one, does not look knightly at all to me. It looks too rangery. Yeah, like maybe like a red cape would work better. I don't have much to say about your overall technique. Like, I think you're doing pretty well here, but your color choices feel a little arbitrary. Okay. So maybe something more like this might be interesting. Maybe not that much, you know. Or maybe a darker green could work. Dark red might work well. You know, something that feels a little more royal, you know? And then, yeah, this I would probably match the red here to this tabard, and then the purple doesn't really interfere. But yeah, like, color can say a lot, especially when it comes to heraldry and stuff. Color can say a lot about who a character is. And before, I think it just, like, I don't think this is saying much about this guy. Like, if he's a ranger, okay, but he feels too clean and armored, and yeah, that doesn't feel much like what a knightly character would be wearing. Okay. In terms of technique, like I said, technique-wise, pretty good. I think you could maybe push some of the lights here on the fur a little bit more. Just a touch. Without going white, you know? Inside of the ears. I like the inside of the ears quite a lot. But yeah, let's consider the character a little bit, you know? Thanks, Sebastian. Appreciate the tier 1. Alright. How long have we been going? An hour 14. Okay, I'm going to take I'm going to step away just for a minute, and then we will be right back. Jumping down again. Okay, Dean. I'm going to start just passing everyone who can't spell my name right in the Discord, though. I'm joking, I don't care that much, but come on. Can I get a bot that just automatically corrects ERIC to ERIK? I know there's other Erics in the Discord, but they can experience having their name misspelled every once in a while. Hi, Lucas. So, painting for about 6 to 7 months now, and wanted to push myself to finally try NMM. I got a hold of Miniature Den's Lion PDF from a friend. Was this a paid PDF? Did you buy this PDF? Did you pirate this PDF from a friend? Are Are you stealing from Mr. Vincenzo? Dean? Being my first attempt at MM, it broke my brain a little bit, especially the shoulder piece, which I couldn't wrap my head around. I feel like it came out gold enough to impress my Discord. Kote, hello, thanks for the prime. And also, I think I missed Stereo Mix Mic. Hello, also thanks for the prime. It was a birthday gift to give myself a deadline for a friend, and I ran out of time on the face, sadly. Blah, blah, blah. All right, you want to know about NMM. Okay. Oh, jeez. Doing the thing where I can't save pictures. Hold on. Save. All right. All right, let's see. So, not bad. I think the gold looks okay. I think the sword looks pretty good. General light placement and stuff is pretty nice. The gold is a little too linear for me. All right, there's a few things. Okay. One of the most important things when it comes to metallics is you need to separate. Separation is so important. Okay, so we need to separate this from the blue. All right. You need dark colors. Okay, there's just like nothing creating a line of separation here. All right. Overall, the photo looks very dark in general. Okay, next thing. All right. Edges. So, look at your yellows. Like, this yellow is like too orangish. Okay, let's try and cool off the yellow a little bit as we get closer to the lights. Okay, we're going to desaturate a little bit too. All right. Painting as small as I can here. So, we need to push the lights a little bit more. All right. Things like this, right? We need that edge. Okay. Then we can use some of these more subtle ones for things like this edge. All right. And don't overdo, like, this is what I would call like zebra stripes, all right? There's a thing like with zebra stripes, what I mean is like where you're like, I need to go this, and then I go dark again, and then I go back, and I go light again, and then I go dark again, and then I go light again. And you end up with these like this sort of repeating pattern of light, dark, light, right? So light, 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 right? It's too repeated, okay? So let some areas just be lighter than others, and some areas be darker than others, okay? Like this, create separation on the shoulder, okay? And then you have like a dark tone, this darker brown tone here, all right? To create like separation, okay? Then push the light more. Okay, this is like up here, you've started to get some like nice lights, right? Now we're getting there. Okay, so boom, push the light, right? Where's the main highlight on this? Boom, push the light. Okay, push the light, right? Edge separation. Okay, these, like, you got to find the sharp points and then where those highlights are going to show up and really like try and punch in those highlights, right? Because these shines are what's going to make it feel metallic. All right, like there's just all this stuff needs to have highlights, right? Like if you've got this highlight here, that means there would be a highlight here on these parts. Okay, all this stuff, all these little rivets and everything would catch highlights. So there's not enough edge definition on these parts. It's a little too orangey, okay? So we need to get some proper shines. Right? Like this guy, right? Like if you've got an edge, if you've got a bright spot here, that should be repeated sort of down here and then catch the little tip things, right? So get those shines. Then with these sorts of parts, right? Now we can create some like shape to this stuff, okay? So we get some like hard sculptural lines to the lion head, all right? I feel like your light placement in some areas is pretty good, but you're just not doing enough edge definition. And that's what really makes it look metallic-y, okay? My other feedback to you is better be paying for these damn tutorials. Don't pirate tutorials. Unless it was free, then it's fine that your friend sent it to you. Okay, same goes for the armor, right? You can't skip lines, okay? Like if this is shiny black armor, okay, you need to catch the edges. Like why did you do this edge, but then you didn't do this edge? Okay. All of those things play into the effect. All right. You should be able to see like quite the difference on the shoulder here, where the how much that definition plays into account, right? Okay. DOMs. Oh, Wall of text. All right. Hello. Thoughts on the scheme for an army project, please? My plan is to create a full display board that will be brown dirt, green grass, maybe blue river creek or something. Center with some lanterns and bamboo, and wanted red to be the key pop color. I really wanted the entire army to be muted and not. Oh my god. Okay, I've done some individual work with Dom before. Can't save again because the thing's annoying. Dom has a tendency to overthink, as you could maybe tell by his message on these guys. So, what I'm going to say is, Dom, stop overthinking it. Okay? Let's look at let's look at the team. All right? Pretty good so far, right? I actually quite like the color scheme. I think the color scheme is going great. The red and yellow looks really good with the muted browns and tans. I think that all looks quite nice. The one thing I don't like is this like splash of teal like that you've included. I think it kind of falls outside the color palette here. Okay? Especially if you're going to use like green for the display board. Okay, I'm not going to go do like a paint over on these because I think the actual like color scheme wise, like we're pretty good. Okay, so what I am going to do is I'm just going to like draw some bamboo shape real quick. Okay, so like if I put a bamboo sort of thing in here, right? We've now introduced another color into the scheme. Okay, so we've got like bamboo gonna be all around, you know, whatever. Okay, so we're introducing now a green. Okay, so what I think is I would look at like we've got this clearly like Asian inspired scheme. Don't know if they're supposed to be more Japanese or Chinese, but by doing that, like we need to eliminate some like anything else, right? So if I was doing a display board, you talked about like grass and all this stuff. No, I would do like a bamboo forest, okay? And then I would do like maybe some sort of temple sort of layout, okay? So you have places for your guys to stand. If I was doing a display board, I would probably do something along the lines of this. I would have like my display board, right? So let's say this is the board, whatever, you know. And then so the board's going to be more flat like this. Oops, I've been drawing on the wrong layer the whole time. Whatever. I would consider like building up, so it would have some kind of like height to it, because this tends to make it look more interesting for right, so some sort of height here, so you can have maybe like a staircase running down with some sort of thing, then maybe like a big, you can reuse the red here to do like a Torii gate or something, you know, where you can put figures up here. And then you can do like the little, use these grays that you're using to do like little lanterns and stuff, you know, the little Asian style lanterns. Okay. The Grand Cathay. Okay, so they're just clearly like Asian inspired. All right, so and if you don't want to do that, you can maybe get like the lion dog statues or something. I'm sure you could find those somewhere, right? I don't know. And then have like some sort of clearing in the path with some staircase type of thing, so that you have plenty of space to like display models vertically, so they're not just sitting on like a flat surface, you know. And then you can put like your your bamboo sort of around the edges in order to create some sort of interest back here, right? And then you have plenty of space in the front to create this kind of vertical path, right? But yeah, that's how I would approach it. So avoid adding too much color, because if your base, like your display, is going to have quite a lot of color to it, that's what I would go with. And I would look at pictures of, like Asian temples, Shaolin temples, things like that, where you can get inspiration for these sorts of things. Okay? But the actual figures seem to be going great. I like the red and black with a bit of yellow splashed in. I would avoid going too heavy with the yellow. And yeah. Hey Eric, first time I am abusing your time here. Is an old project. I was wondering if you can help me finish this guy with some thoughts on the finish line and workovers. For example, right shoulder. Maybe some of your insights, ideas. Can't see. Overall, yep. He's running towards a fire. Okay. Supposed to be a nighttime scene. Guy running towards a fire. Sells pretty well so far. So big things. Okay. I think the cold side looks pretty dang good. All right. The warm side is a little weirder, where this does not really feel like the warm side. Okay. So certain materials, like I think it's getting way too yellow in some spots. Like flame doesn't really look that intense on these sort of colors. Right, I've showed with the lighter before how this sort of looks, but specifically on like the rocks and stuff, unless rocks are like directly next to the flames, like he's about to jump over the fire, like tone this back. Okay, this needs to be toned way down. All right, so don't make this so yellowish. This is like a pretty nice color that you have here. Okay, so something along these lines, like, doesn't need to be yellow. Orange, more oranges. The yellow in the metallic works because metallic is going to reflect more a direct representation of the flame. Okay, even the like shirt, I would go with like a more orangish tone. All right, I think you're kind of overdoing the Terminator here. I would darken some of these parts down a little bit, or lighten some of the like darken the lights of the white, and then also like reduce the Terminator some. Okay. So this would like blend into each other a little bit more, where both light sources are affecting this white at the same time. Okay, so look at his shirt now compared to like the tabard. You can see that like this orange is like this yellow. It just looks like dirty instead of like light flames, you know. So again, tone this back. It's just too much. Right, but like The brown leather is definitely not going to reflect that much. Now, I can't quite tell what's going on with the shield, but this light here, this light, and this light, none of these makes any sense because they're on top of the arm. And where is the flame? Like, is the flame, like, all above him? Hey, Eric, relatively new here. Do you mind explaining what you mean by the Terminator? So when you have... Yeah, I can do it real fast. Let's take an object. Okay? Let's draw a sphere. Okay, here's your sphere. Okay? Light's coming in from this direction. Imagine this is the moon, okay? And this is the light from the sun. This half of the ball would... All of this half of the ball would be in shadow. And the other half of the ball, this half of the ball would be in light. Right? Something like that. Okay. I'll go a little darker. Alright. So something like this. This line here that I drew, okay, this one right in the mid, where the light stops and the shadows begin is called the Terminator. All right, when you're talking about any form, okay. Then you have to blend these together. So then you have halftones, where the halftones start to blend into the lights, right? Then you have a highlight. Okay, and then this starts to shadow down further like that. So you have a soft transition because it's a round object. But that Terminator has not moved. That Terminator is still right here. Okay? This is called the Terminator. It is where the shadows stop. Okay, and then if you introduced a second light source or a bounce light of some kind, so let's say we had a more orangish light coming from the other side, right? Then you would start to have something like this. And even if this orange light starts to affect the Terminator a little bit, the Terminator has not moved. It's still in the same position. Okay. Makes sense, I hope. That's a Terminator. All right. What would the top of his head reflect? Would it is there flame up here somewhere to be affecting the top of his head? No. So this doesn't make sense. Get rid of it. This doesn't make sense. Get rid of it. None of it. This doesn't make sense. Okay. The flame would only affect the lower areas. Anything like on the more the bottom. All right. Okay, then maybe his arm is like far enough away that like some of this arm is actually affected by the flame, okay, because metallic reflects from farther away. Depends on if his body would be in the way, but I imagine some of this could see the fire, so I would put some orange reflecting on that. This would all reflect the back of the shield, basically. Sometimes you can cheat some light under there. But, yeah, you need to be thinking about, like, where this stuff reflects, right? And then use some dark red, okay? Some, like, dark orangish red that's, like, getting more towards gray. These sort of, like, brick colors. And create these, like, transitional tones between the like, rock, you know? Yeah, I see you have some, but you don't have enough. All right. Hi, Dungeon and Dry Gens. Welcome. Can't really see what's going on the shield, but again, that's another one where you need to think about like what's facing upwards and how tall is this flame and stuff, and would the top part of the shield be reflecting orange, you know? Rude. Hi, Eric. I'm new here and would love feedback on a recent finished Mega Boss. I would like to know what could have done better on this main to improve my next one. In general, I feel I struggle with getting a clear focal point and putting the right values in the right places, and somehow his back turned out better than his front, and as if I overworked the front maybe. Can see that a little bit. So, focus. Let's talk about focus. Okay, so how do we create focus, right? What parts do we want to look at on this guy? What are the, typically when you're talking about full figures, what are the main focal areas? That's a question to chat. This is where you guys answer. The face, weapons, hands, right? Those are the important things, okay? We can think of it kind of like a T, okay? The cross, all right? So if we were to draw like a cross on him, right? Anywhere near here, here, these are important, okay? This gets less important as it goes down. Right? So, what ways can we help create focus? What sorts of things help create focus? Color, yeah, color, saturation, value, right? Contrast in general helps to create focus, okay? So, let's look at his face, right? I think his face is pretty nice, actually. But this is a tough model because you obscure a lot of his face with this thing. And is this part of his face? I would argue it is, okay? Okay, so this, in the case of this figure, I would consider this massive like metal jaw thing to actually be part of his face, okay? So one thing we could do is we can push the light on this a little more in order to create more interest up here, all right? So let's push the contrast here. Let's push the value, the light value up more on his metal jaw thing. All right, so we're going to just increase the value some. And then we're going to push the light even more, okay? Now, there's one thing you guys did not mention, though it is a type of contrast. All right. One thing you didn't mention is detail, okay? So like rendering can be a type of contrast, all right? So we want really to we want to push this more, Okay, so we want like really sharp definition on these parts. Like, look how much I'm going up a lot. All right. So spend some extra time around the face and try and really get this stuff like nice and defined. And don't be afraid to push the lights here, all right? Because this is where we want people to look. Okay, so now the difference between and this, like this helps draw you into the face more, okay? What is one of the big problems that we have on this figure? What's the brightest value? What's the brightest thing on this figure? And there's a lot of it. Yeah, boy, the snow. Well, if you guys know anything about me, there's a thing I like to do with my snow. Okay? Got an airbrush? I hope so. I like to apply shadows to my snow. Because if you actually look at snow, it does not tend to be like ultra pure white, right? I'm going to go back and I'm going to delete around some of this stuff. So I like to apply some shadowing to my snow, and then we can apply a little to the feet also. And this is going to help reduce some of that like extreme brightness to the right, and then when we clean up around it, you can see that it okay. Maybe not quite that much. I like to do this in very subtle layers, slowly building it up. But you can see the just the difference between these two. It still looks like snow, right? But now it's not like so in your face, okay? So a little bit of ink, like a nice like cyan kind of turquoisey blue ink can really make these effects more like the snow effect much more subtle and not so distracting, right? Okay, what else needs more? Well, what do we say was important? Weapons hands, right? Weapons and hands, baby. So we need to push the light more on the axe. We need to create more interest here. Hands need more interest. Let's grab some of this light green. Okay. So now with all that, right, just that little bit of pop and highlights on the axe like that. And then reducing the base and adding some more light around the face. Those three things together, we create a much more But see, the focus is much more on the where you want it to be. Okay. All right. Who's that? Chicago Hobby Hero. Welcome. I feel like I missed some people. I missed Jorge Padawan. Hype Sissy. Hello. And Punishment 9. Well, welcome in, everyone. Sorry, I get in the zone. I get thinking about these figures and I lose track of the notifications. All right, Flapjack. Did we do one for you earlier? Wait, am I crazy? All right. Well, let's look at it. Okay. So, what do we think? He's looking for general feedback. I think some things are really nice. The shirt looks great. General like lighting direction and some of the volume interpretation is quite good. Yeah, I think quite a lot of it works well. I think the thing that I'm kind of lacking here is on the face, and some of your black lining is like really thick. No, I wouldn't. Don't worry about the flame. That little flame is not going to do a whole lot, especially if she's like outside in the daytime. It's like next to nothing. It's going to do literally next to nothing. Go light a lighter outside and see if you can see it affecting anything at all. It's just too weak of a light source. So I think some of your black lines are pretty thick here. So I would work on painting thinner, and I think like on the face, yeah, I think you're just missing some level of like how small you're painting, right? So I think like here on the face, right, you've got sort of these shapes. One thing is that like her head is turned, all right? So she's tilted like this, okay? Hi, John. Hi, Grambo. Welcome. Right, so she's leaning kind of like this. And if the lighting direction, which tells me it's coming more from this direction due to the cast shadow here, right? If this light, and the fact that her face is casting a shadow also kind of in this area, right? So if we're talking about the lighting direction is more this direction, this is too dark, okay? So her head is turned towards the light. So we want, like, she's tilting, okay? So some of these areas are a little too dark, all right? Next thing, you have some nice like reddish tones in the cheek, but you have no reddish tones in the nose. Also, you're creeping a little too much light onto the side of the nose here. We would have that Terminator would be more on like the bridge of the nose. Okay, connect these. we can give her a little bit of, if she's turning her head away from the light, we can give a little bit of shadow there, right? Just under the eyelid. The ear also needs way more red in it. And then you have the nasal fold here, which you might want to just gently establish. All right, so more light just on the side of her face that faces towards the sun. You can also introduce a little more shape into the forehead. Like this under here would actually catch light. And then we can push some real highlights in this. Okay? So like nose tends to get quite a bright highlight. You have a nice highlight on the lip there. And then forehead, I would push the highlight a little more. You actually would get a bit of a highlight here. Alright, tone that back, like make that really subtle. Okay, so something like that. Alright, see how much she's tilting her head? So, difference on the face there, like how we render the face, right? Think about like the tilt of the head. I feel like you painted the head like this, right? You painted the head like she was sitting upright, but she's really leaning. Okay. Hope that was helpful. What program I use? Procreate. Hi. Hi, Uj. Hi. And Philip. Hello. Welcome in. Great. All right. I think that'll help you out some. Okay. Oh, where am I going? Discord. Z. All right, guys. Mercus, whoever's typing right now. Well, I'm not taking any more today, so we're shutting off. Well, I can get to hopefully next week, but we got to get through these. Looking for feedback on readability and definition or anything you see that needs work. Okay. Save. Let's look at this. Big one I'm seeing right now. General light stuff, like metallic is working now. Okay, like if we look at them like this, right, where we don't zoom in too far, this is totally working. Like looks like metal to me. Okay, problem comes when we start to zoom in a little too much. Okay, now where it's like it just needs, everything needs to be a little sharper. All right. Particularly like in some of these areas. So let's look. Right, like if this part of the rondelle is going to catch light, like I want it to catch sort of around, right? One thing I will say, you have inverted cones here. So you have a cone and then another cone. That cone is going to repeat down here. So any reflection that you have on one side will repeat on the other, because these are it's like looking in a spoon, right? The front of a spoon versus the back of a spoon, the reflection flips. So any reflection that we have on here will repeat here. Okay. But yeah, like come back, you need to come back with some dark color and like really try and get some of these lines like cleaned up. Okay. Enhance that, so just sharpening things, you know, like try and get those lines like clean as possible. There's just a little too rough in some of these areas. All right. See over here, like I've lost this shape completely. Like I don't know where that lip is. But general light placement is really nice. Now, the face, okay? This needs some work, all right? Big things here, boom, like we've got to set, like this is going to be extremely dark in here, all right? Where the like actual line is, you know? So we need to define that out, okay? So that's the first thing. Then take some of this white, right? Whatever, this like creamy gray white sort of color, and clean up this. Like you got literal, like the skin tone sort of on the shape, okay? So really try and get this nice and crispy. I would even consider changing it. Like, you maybe consider doing something like this, like reuse the blue or the red. So instead of just like a white fabric, it's this way it won't blend in so much with the steel, right? Like maybe it's a red fabric or like a dark blue fabric instead. Might help separate that fabric out a little bit more. Again, can help draw some attention. Okay. And then yeah, let's look at the face. We need to simplify some shapes here. All right. If I go back like this, I'm not really seeing sort of the simple shapes of his face. Okay. So I want to separate light and shadow a little more. All right. So I'm going to take this sort of shadow color you have here. And we're going to think about like his nose, right? So the bottom, let's you do it on the multiply layer, right? So like the bottom of his nose is going to be in shadow. Underneath his lip might be in shadow. These areas underneath his eyes are going to be in shadow. And then if you want, you can do this like
cast shadow, maybe this cast shadow from his helmet sort of across his face like this. Okay, so it's going to be like quite dark up here where it gets close to that edge. All right. Maybe you get some dark lines underneath his eyes, and then the face is going to shadow a little bit as it gets close to the edge, but I think you've pushed it a little too much. All right. So now, like, where's the light going to be? So the light is going to be on these upward facing volumes. So things like here, right? Really the bridge of his nose is not going to have any shadow. Connect the fold. This should actually have more shadow like this. Okay, you got these like corners of the mouth, and then we could start to add some of these like dimples back in. We can get like the upper lip nice and defined, or you know, create these shadows. This is another one that drives me nuts. Like, don't put that like super deep shadow there on the Cupid's bow. Okay, then we can enhance the fold a little if we want, depending on his facial expression, but it doesn't tend to like go all the way to the corner of the mouth. All right, try and get this cleaned up. It's a little chalky. And if you want, yeah, you can do the same thing here where you kind of paint the shadow underneath the nose like that. Okay. Then we paint highlights. Okay, now we put in highlights. So highlights come in at the end. You get a highlight here, get the highlights here, right? This one sort of bridges down like this, right? Just like we did on the last face. Okay. That. Right, some of the cheek highlights, those are rounded. Highlight the upper lip. Maybe highlight his dimples a little. Highlight his lower lip. Might have a little highlight on the chin, but it tends to be a little softer. Okay. So highlights are reflections, just like non-metallic, all right? So it's like we simplify the face, but the shape face is really important, right? Then if you want, you can switch to more grayish tones, right? You can play around with some of the coloration of the face, like if you want to give him, you know, a bit of a 5 o'clock shadow or whatever, you can mess around with that stuff. There you go. There's a night face. He's so happy to be doing whatever he's doing. Okay? So, lining, sharpness, and then, yeah, we'll work on the face some more. But the actual reflection replacement, or the actual reflection placement stuff is pretty nice. Murph. Updating pics referenced in my original post. I'm looking for general feedback on what's going right or wrong, especially what can be done to improve it further. Aim for the standard category, the broken traffic light, pieces of newspaper not glued down yet. We can dirty them up a bit. Okay. Let's look. Oh, that's only 2 of the 3. The Wrecking Crew. Which one was yours, Dimitri? So, honestly, I like where it's at. Nice definition over here. Pretty nice on him. You could push a little more. I can't remember it. I know he's the wrecker. He's like Thunderhead or something. I can't remember all their names. Yep, well, you'll be able to watch it on YouTube later, tomorrow. Yeah, so far, I mean, I get, like, the Wrecking Crew is absolutely ridiculous when it comes to, like, color schemes. This could be really difficult to, like, make this work together, right? Because you've got so many different, like, insane... This is, like, the 1960s when this team was made, like, and they haven't really updated their costumes design at all. So yeah, they're really cheesy. How can we tie these together a little bit? So this often comes down to, this is one of those times when I go like, okay, maybe a bit of work with some like some mother colors, right? Some universal shadow colors might help out a little bit. So like what color could we use here to kind of make these work together, right? Like maybe some kind of subtle bluish tone. I wouldn't say do this for the contest because this is going to be a lot of work to change all this stuff, you know? But this is one of those things where here is kind of a time where you can like you can see that this blue sort of works even as a shadow color on this orange, right? This blue works as a shadow color on this green. You've already done it. You've already done it, actually. This blue will work as a shadow color for this green, and maybe even a little bit the yellow, right? So by mixing a little bit of blue into all the shadows, right, it's going to help tie these guys together a little bit, you know? It'll work on the red, it'll work on the white, right? So we can introduce this sort of overall kind of cool tone, right? Watch what happens here. Let's delete that for a second. I'll do this, okay? So you can see it. We're going to change the color balance. All right? No, this, okay? So in the shadows, we're just going to push them more bluish, all right? Everything shifts a little more blue. And then, in the highlights, right, we take a color like yellow or something. Some kind of warmer color, right? You can see now it's like, it starts to help tie these guys together a little bit, okay? So we're creating this sort of, this like, cold warm ambience, right? So now instead of just pure white, it's like this kind of yellowish tone, right? And that works as a color in here and on the white and on the yellow and all this stuff. And it helps it helps like tie the whole scene together so that there's this sort of shared ambience between the figures, and it helps to like reduce the like kind of craziness to all the colors that are sort of all over the place. So by mixing kind of a bit of a cool tone into all your shadows and a sort of like more warmish tone into your lights in this situation, we can help harmonize what is otherwise a completely disjointed set of color schemes, right? The base is cool, man. Like the base, I like it a lot. I think like the texturing and stuff is all quite good. Like the brick and everything, the wrecking ball looks really nice. I think your general lights and stuff are quite good. You could maybe push the highlights a little bit more in a couple spots. Like we'll take this like nice light color here and just, you know, like maybe pop like take and like on his head or something, right? Some of the more important areas that we want, like again, this is that focus thing where it's like we want, you know, sort of around their faces and stuff to just draw a little more attention, so we can push the highlights a little bit further just in a couple spots, you know? Huh? Does the orange guys in and M work? Yeah, it's fine. It works. Okay, so just like pumping up that light in a little bit more in a couple spots can really help like draw the attention where you want. Okay? I hope that's helpful. But yeah, the actual like figures look great. I think, like I said, you could maybe push the like line work on a couple of these guys a little bit more, like specifically on the wrecker. Like he could have some sharper lines, you know. Like this is not separated enough. So just yeah, I would go back and fix a couple of those things, but in general, pretty nice. All right. All right, Russell, we're going to come back to you. I'm going to take a quick break and then we'll come back. We've got a few more to go. Okay. I only have an hour left, so I'm going to try and at least hit ones that I know I saw last week that were resubmitted. All right. So, all right, I'll be right back. I am back. See how we're doing. Eric, I'm nearly done with this project. Just clean up and tunic embroidery left. I'm using a limited gold brown palette and aiming to suggest a red throne room as the environment without overdoing it. Before diving into the embroidery, could I get some general feedback on the model? I'd like to push this as far as I can. This looks pretty good. Face is really nice. Face is this is Henry VIII, right? Not crazy. Or is this someone else? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, dude, I like the red in the shadows. The whites look pretty good. Face is looking excellent. didn't overdo the folds there. That's all quite nice. Hat looks good. All the gems and stuff are pretty sweet. One thing I think I'm a little... The one thing I don't like as much is the fur, okay? So I think the fur here is lacking a little bit of shape. And what I mean by that is, like, I think it could have a little more overall shape to it. So let's grab like one of the lighter colors, something like this. And let's just push the light, the volume a little more. So like here, right? Like I would like a little more overall form to this guy, okay? Something like this, right? So a little more light, like up on the shoulders. I think you've done it pretty well, but it's still just a little bit too, the light was like a little too concentrated in kind of one spot. Okay, so that's kind of my big thing I'm seeing right now. And then I think we can push some of the highlights a little bit more. So this will create a little bit more of a rounded feel to it, make it a little bit softer. All right. There's a subtle difference here, but like if we look at before and after, like this doesn't really have much shape to it, like overall shape. This has more overall shape. Okay. So that's kind of the big one, the sort of big thing I'm seeing at the moment. Metallics and stuff were quite nice. It's very easy when you're doing fur to get lost in just the texture and lose the overall volumetrics to the sort of shape here, right? Now, in terms of other parts, like, yeah, I think it's going really well. I think you could have a little more definition in some spots. Someone correctly mentioned that, yes, some of these parts look like they're a little floaty. So, like, defining some of these areas a little bit more. Okay, things like underneath the collar here, we can define a little bit further. Like under the white, I think you've done a really good job. But yeah, there were just a couple spots where it's like, just needs to be just a little bit more so it feels like it's sitting on top, you know? I don't really know what's up with his shirt, like how this whole thing works, but yeah. All this edge definition's great. This looks quite good. Would I do anything to the face here? I think I might consider pushing the light just like a little bit more on the, like just the nose, right? Hands are nice. I don't have a whole lot to say about this, to be honest. The fur was definitely the thing that was kind of throwing me off. I like that shadow under here. I think maybe I'd have to see like a picture of him or like a painting, you know, of him. The facial hair is sticking out a little to me in terms of like maybe it should be like a little bit darker or something to like separate it a little bit more. It feels like a little too close to the skin tone in some spots, so like maybe toning it down just a little bit might make it feel a little better. Like I've also clearly you have some small brush skills, so I would try and create like a few little strands of, you know, wispy lines that create that like soft edge to the hairs, right? So you can freehand some little stray hairs here and there to make this transition feel a little more natural. His eyebrows are a little weak, like I feel like I'm missing some of the color that I would expect to see in his eyebrows. I don't think he shaved them, so maybe just a little bit of color there. Anything else about his face? Not really. Overall, I'd say I'm pretty impressed. Oh, I would maybe consider the gems, like try and create maybe a second like reflection kind of here somewhere. Like if these are like faceted gems, like that, you might have some larger white reflections. Like, okay, here, this is like for an example. So here you have the white reflection of this gem, right? And it's sort of focused here, okay? And then as we come around, like this reflection is going to start to shift more towards the central view, right? So it might make more sense for it to be like here and then like up here, right? Where is it going to be? It's going to be like on the facing the facet that's more central, right? So here it's like in the top right, which doesn't really make sense. It might be more like here. So these are all going to change depending on the viewer's position. So don't just put them in the exact same spot on every single gemstone. You need to consider like what the main view is, and then like here, that this is smart. You did like this corner and then you did this corner, right? That makes sense. But on the ones on the neck, they kind of move all over the place. So try and be like a little more conscious of where those like bright faceted reflections are going to show up. Okay.
Bigster 94 and unpainted edu.
Hello, welcome. But yeah, good job, man. Really cool.
Very nice.
OP Minis. Hi, Eric. Started working on this new project and looking for advice on making the greens feel different. I was thinking of using a dark red as a shade on the green. Okay, so this is an easy fix. All right. Let's do the thing. So, how to make the greens feel different? Well, here's the problem.
Tell me which greens are which. You can't, because they're all the same. You're highlighting everything sort of the same.
The hat does feel slightly different. but other parts, like, I can't tell at all, right? So what's the problem? You're highlighting everything the exact same, okay? So it's like this, okay? This green looks identical to this green, and then this green. So they're all the same. So we need to let some just be darker than others, all right? So if we're going to do this green as a different green, right? Maybe this green needs to just be an overall darker green. I'm going to paint over the rivets because I don't feel like taking the time to try and paint around them. Okay, so we use a darker green here on the inside in order to what? And let's use a darker green up here. All right, just overall a darker green. Okay, so what we achieve here is now we're using the white, right, to create value separation between the white of the like trim and the more white jacket. All right, right, see the difference? Okay, let's put this back on top. So we can use the same colors. Now you can see that like that inner part of his jacket is clearly like a different color, right? Then this green, okay, this one's all right, but let's get like a more limeish green that's a little lighter, and we're going to use, we don't need to shadow this quite so much. Okay, so let's reduce the shadows here just a little bit. Not the like dark lining, just the shadows. Okay, so by reducing the dark lining, or the shadow areas, but not the dark lines, we leave the dark lines because we want those. Okay. So just by lightening, see the difference? Like it's subtle, all right? But then now again, it feels like separate, okay? And then I would say that actually this is probably a little too much, like you're pushing the contrast on these white areas probably a little too far. So let's increase the overall value here just a touch. Guys, let things that are light colors, light values, be light, you know? You don't have to, and this will also help this green, like this green trim show up more when you do like a darker green trim on the white, okay? Let things that are light be light, you know? We create contrast between materials, not on every material, okay? So just like that, heck, even on his beard, like let's tone this down just a touch, okay? Just a little bit. We can still have highlights, but they don't need to be quite so bright, all right? So just by altering that, right? Make a few adjustments. Make a few adjustments here. Okay, I didn't touch, like, you still have your shiny highlight there. It's fine. And then you can see now, like, when we do this, we have, like, clear separation between the different elements, right? Where before, if we do this, everything sort of feels samey, right? Other than the bird, right? This all feels samey. Add some darker elements, add some lighter elements, and we get a much more
clear picture of what's going on. Okay?
Hope that was helpful. Easy one. Easy fix. Hello, Eric. I recently did a workshop with Benoit Menard. I don't know if I'm familiar. Around TMP and Lavis glazes. Okay. Love some feedback to further enhance the piece. Okay.
It's a wash, which Lavi makes sense. Like lavadura would be wash in Spanish, and veladura is glaze. But
So the thing I'm seeing here is there is like a lot of white like showing up. If you were using washes and stuff, I don't think you were getting enough of it into the recesses. Like there's a lot of gray that is showing up in these areas. Like, can you guys see this? This is like unpainted areas. Okay. Here's another spot I see it really bad. Like, see this white? This white like underneath the crown and like up under here. So you're not getting enough, you're not getting the paint like into these areas, okay? So you need, when you need to make sure you're like rotating the model and flipping it around so that this doesn't happen. That you're not just painting like the top surface, you're painting like that bottom surface also, because this is what's going to create like the separation and stuff you want. All right, because right now you just don't, it's just not there. So it looks like it just doesn't have that separation to it. Like there's too much of this white showing through. I'm curious how you primed this. Did it start as like a white primer? But yeah, getting these areas in here like nice and dark, right, is what's going to create that separation and folds. I see this with when people use like contrast paint also. They don't like get it into the recess. They like apply it over the top, but they don't like really like jam it in there and get it into like the deep areas, right? Which is what a wash is supposed to do, is supposed to like flow into these areas. So I guess if you were talking about as like a glaze in this case, that could be like one of the causes for why that like this like white is showing up in these like deep recesses, you know? Another reason I like to zenithal instead of just spray white is this doesn't happen as much. Like you tend to get more those blacks like showing up in the deep recesses. So like if you accidentally miss one of these spots, it's not as noticeable because it's at least like black in there instead of like pure white showing up. Okay, so big thing for me is, yeah, getting those, like, make sure when you do this coverage that you're really pushing that like in there. Like I could see way too much white showing through. All right. Next thing is, this face is weird, but you're probably overdoing some of the shadows here a little too much. Oh, I'm hungry. Can you hear that? Can you guys hear my stomach? Are you a contrast paint fan? It has its uses. I used it to paint the Tyranid kill team I did. I think it definitely has its use cases. Okay, so I would try and avoid overdoing some of the shadows down there. Like we've got all this like pinky purple blue, but we kind of lose that color, so all this is turning kind of white. So maybe bring back some of this like lavender color. Don't overdo the white on the face too much. If you're aiming for a purple, just use like a light purple and then be kind of smart with how much like highlighting you do, right? So don't lose the color. It's like this doesn't really have that color that I would expect. All right, and then on the face we need like some actual nice deeper shadows. So like, you know, in here, in the ears, you're gonna have like these deep shadows in this like part of the nose here, right?
You thought it was, yeah.
Dude, it's growling. I'm starving right now. I'm looking forward to whatever we're going to get for dinner, whatever we're having for dinner, because I'm rumbling. Okay, and then yeah, adding some of those deeper values. This stuff is like, I don't want to go too much into this. Like I assume this is like a true metallic metal and stuff, and you like that's very dependent on how you see it in hand. Okay, but yeah, make sure you get those deep recesses. Okay, don't be afraid to push some shadows in these areas. That does not mean flood the model with like super deep shadows, but it means like define with some stronger shadow shapes. Okay. And then at the end, then you can come back with like a nice like whitish color and pop in like some highlights, you know. But you don't want to this is another thing, like you don't want to overdo it. Okay. Okay. Puretrix. In case you didn't read the previous post, for the context of our practice of volumes and values, but any advice will be more than welcome. Some more work on it. Now the darker side is much better. All right, hold on. I'm just gonna skim over this real quick. Additionally, some tips on how to paint the goggles and the dog tags for more realistic. Okay. I don't like this picture. It doesn't show me enough. We're gonna look at this one. Shut up. Okay. Well, we've got it in black and white. I don't even have to do the black and white trick. What do you guys think? Do we think when I pull back like this, can you see any shapes? It's kind of the shape and like I sort of see that there's the hair, right? I can generally see like the shape of the shirt. I actually don't think there's the shirt is too bad. I think the problem kind of comes that the face has the most contrast, but there's not like a clear there's just not a clear like value structure to the face. It's very easy to get lost in details really early. I also think you probably could go more black. Okay, so we're gonna start with this. We're gonna darken some areas. All right. Okay, what areas do we want to be dark? All right. Clearly the hair is dark. Okay, so let's make it dark. All right, that includes his mustache. Okay, because his mustache is getting kind of lost on his face right now. His eyebrows. Then we want to separate things. Okay. All right. Now, the face. Okay. You're too focused on like individual little, what I would call like micro volumes instead of the general shape of the face. Okay, so let's take and like what is the lighting direction here? It's like the light is split like right down the middle. Is it split right down the middle? If that's the case, then like this should be split down the middle, right? So we need to bring over more light onto the other side of the face, and we need to focus, so bigger shapes first, all right? So, this cheek, his nose, right? The forehead here. Part of his jaw. His chin is round, right? So we start to get, then we need to bring some light onto this side of the face. And this is basically like the triangle here. Okay, and then the rest of that could be in shadow. His ear needs way more light. All right, so now we're getting somewhere. Okay, then once you've established the major volumes, then you start to, right, even this, like this could be a little darker. Or not so much darker, but just like flatter, you know? Like you're trying to add too much detail everywhere instead of just letting it, like getting the overall shape in, okay? This is a thing I run into a lot where people like, they want to they want to get too focused on the details immediately, right? Okay, his neck, right? It's like, let the neck and the chest have light on it. If the light's crossing over, then yes, you might have some shadow on this side, but then that's going to be much more plain. right? The light crosses this way. Yeah, I know it's running low on battery. Okay. You have this sort of shape here. The light crosses over his neck. His head casts a shadow. And then all this stuff is a little darker, right? Whatever shape that is. Okay? So now we start to introduce some more general shape to things. Okay? I really can't stress enough how important it is to get the general shape of things in first and then focus on the details. Right? It's always going to come across like much better this way. Okay? If you're doing dog tags, they're shiny. Right? Focus on the edges, pop the light out. They also they tend to have a rolled edge. So you're going to catch light on both ends. All right? And then something like this. As far as the lenses, oof, man, the look at camera lenses or something, I don't know. The goggles, don't want to take too much time talking about like drawing goggle reflections because, yeah. Okay. Basic shapes first, then details. All right. Ursor. I think this might be one of the last ones we're going to get to. But I wanted to get to it because he submitted last week. He's corrected some things. All right. One of the first things I noticed, I actually looked at this picture last week. One of the first things I noticed was sort of the hair shape. So if we look at sort of the direction, it's kind of hard to see because the picture, but if we look at the direction here, the brush strokes kind of go like this. Okay? Up, 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 up. Right? Can you guys see that? Maybe, maybe not. Use the shape to your advantage. Okay? Use the sculpt to your advantage here. The hair should flow in the direction of the sculpt. So you need to have your brush strokes follow the direction. Okay? So like this should go like that. Okay. Then you can cross over sometimes, but like try and maintain the hair, the flow of the hair, right? She doesn't have dreads. She has. Okay. So you're asking about the black line here. So grab some of this dark color and just paint this line in. Right? Like separate the arm there. Okay. This line could be definitely cleaner. I still think this is a little too, if you want to think about like the rib cage, yours doesn't have a rib cage right now. So we want to get in that rib cage a little bit. Don't overdo that stomach line, okay? And as we go down, it should get more like neutral toned, okay? Oh, all right. This is all pretty good. Now, I will say on like the green and the fabric, I think you're overdoing the highlights a little too much. Again, we're like trying to push way up to white. If you're doing if you're trying to achieve a satin, I guess it makes sense. Like a silk or satin. But if you're doing a silk or satin, those highlights tend to be a little more concentrated. So what I would do is okay, it's supposed to be silk. All right, so silk, we could look at a silk real quick. Here's a very similar color. Okay, not a lot of this is in the sun though, so maybe let's look at this one, right, where we get a bit more pop to it. Okay, let's look at the color here. Is that pure white or is that like a nice teal? And also, what's the percentage of that light value to a darker value, right? So it's quite shiny and the shines are pretty stark, but then like you have these more intense color areas, okay? I think you've done a pretty good job, but I think you're missing some of that like just really intense color, right? So like especially these like parts that don't face like in the reflection, right? These should be these like more like really intense teal colors, okay? And then that highlight should be quite shiny, right? It should be really like, it's like super stark. So this right here, this is not bad, but we want, instead of like over here in the white, we want like this like really light version of it, right? So it should be like really saturated. Okay. Same with the purple, right? So instead of, or whatever, it's like purple, like you have this super intense bluish color, right? Which is nice. But then instead of that, we should come up kind of here, right? So instead of like all the way up to white, like we want this color. Right, we need to get that saturated lights in there. So don't push it too far, you know? And then yeah, you need a bit more of that transitional color in here somewhere. Like this doesn't even face towards the main. You can't have two main reflections, like those don't make sense. So okay. They should reflect the same way your non-metallics do. All right. And then when you're talking about these guys, we sort of talked about it on Henry there. You want to pick one of the facets, and you want one of the facets to be like nice and shiny. So think about them like non-metallic reflections, and just really push like a white reflection on there. Okay. Other than that, I think it's going pretty well. There's some like nuanced stuff to the face, but I don't want to. I've talked so much about painting faces. There's like micro details and stuff to the face that you can make, because the sculpt on this face is quite smooth, right? There's not like a ton of like little bumps and details to it. It's a face that you can definitely like sculpt to how you want to kind of create a bit of whatever character you want to this model, right? So like choosing to do this, right? Maybe introducing some play around with some of these colors in order to like reuse them elsewhere. Okay, so it's not just like in one spot. You can do something like this and then give her some nice like reflective eye makeup or something, but yeah. Okay. I will do one more. No, we're going to go in order. Richard, you're too late. Okay. So still work in progress, working on it for ReaperCon. All right. So, what do we see? Man, my iPad's going to die too. Everything's telling me that this is Hyper Bunny. Is this you? No. Dicey's last. Is that you? Oh. Well then, very good. Okay, so how big is this? What's the scale? This little armadillo man. I think he's an armadillo. It's 50 to 60 millimeters tall. Okay, this thing is big. All right. So, line thickness, all right. This is, instead of, so you're trying to pull off like what feels like kind of a cartoony effect, okay? So when we're talking about cartoony effects, we want to think about cell shading, right? So it's not just like, it's not just painting like individual like lines on everything, right? You've got these like super thick lines. Instead, focus on like the shapes that will get light and which ones won't, okay? So here, like the tops of the stairs are going to be lighter. So we're creating value separation here. Maybe like this rock face, all these top ones are going to get more light than the bottom ones, all right? So we're using different values here in order to create some separation in this stuff. Okay, and then we can go a little lighter. We can do something like this, right? Where we have these facets of the rock show up more. All right, so we get a little shine on them or something. Then we can put like a little, right? So we're creating separation in these planes, okay? Then you have to paint like thin lines. So this is your lines before, they're just too thick, okay? Should be able to paint a little thinner than that. Try and use maybe the edge of the brush, okay? To get some nice tapered lines, right? Some nice thin edges, okay? As for the fur, we kind of talked about this on Henry VIII, but like I would like to see, instead of just like a little line, what I want to see is a little more overall shape to the fur. So coming in and like saying, okay, here, we'll do this and just like tone this down, right? So it's like the top of this leg is just brighter, the top of here, the top of this arm is brighter, right? So it's like cell shading and then texture on top of that. So we need to get like some general volumes to some of these things, okay? Right, top of the ears. Okay, then let's look at the back real quick. Same problem, same sort of problem here, where you're focused too much on the raised edges instead of thinking of these as like planes, okay? So it's like, think of his cape, the folds of his cape like a staircase, all right? And we want to paint the tops of the stairs, okay? So instead of just like on the edge, right, we want to paint the whole flat of the top of the stair, and then we connect them. Okay, so here you're like really kind of just like going around each edge. Focus instead on the flat, right? If you have something that's shaped like this, right? Where does the light hit on each one of these? Well, it hits here, but it also hits down in there, right? And then it hits here and here, okay? That's fine, you want to make it look black, but then you, instead what you do is you come back and you tone it way back, okay? So then you have to come back with a darker value and like tone it down, you know? And don't use as much blue, use more grays. All right, so instead of like a black or like a blue black, maybe try something a little more grayish. All right, so like here, I'll tone this down, and then instead of this, I'll use like this sort of blue-gray. And then pump that light up a little bit more. And we get much more subtle highlights, right? So focus more on the top and sort of the edges, or not so much the edges. Like if you edge highlight fabric too much, it makes it look like really stiff. Okay? Yeah, don't start edge highlight too early. Just get the general shapes in first, and then you can focus on doing like the detail work of edges and stuff. Okay? So that should feel like kind of a black cape, right? But clearly like even in here you can see where the paint is reflecting. You can see that there's lights there, right? So this is a bit more accurate to the lighting situation, right? In your reference, you can see the shininess of the black paint. Cool. All right, guys. That's all we have time for today. I hope that was helpful. My stomach has been very loud, so I'm gonna go hopefully get some food, and I will see you guys on Wednesday. So, thanks everyone. Oh wait, I guess we could be nice and raid someone. Well, bye YouTube.